Consider for a moment, if you will, the greatest achievements in your life, the ones that held the most value. Was the journey easy? Or did it require significant effort and sacrifice? Should the journey into the kingdom of heaven be any different? Before diving into the nature of the narrow path, let's first examine the history of the much more widely popular route. See, the problem is that from youth we were put on a path from which we must escape. You see, Adam and Eve's decision in the garden placed us into a family that requires acknowledgement of an inheritance of corruption. Now you may say, well, Josh, I can't control the family that I was born into. And that's very true. But think about this. If you were born into a crime family and you continued with the family's practices, what would be the consequences? So the point I'm trying to make here is that we are not going to find the narrow path by following human nature. Let me put it a different way by examining a quote by C.S. Lewis. What I call myself now is hardly a person at all. It's mainly a meeting place from various natural forces, desires, and fears. Some from my education, some perhaps from devils. The self you were really intended to be is something that lives not from nature, but from God. So although the world commercializes our human nature, we must remember it is our enemy. 1 Corinthians points out that the natural man is unable to receive the things from the Spirit of God. It is foolishness to him. The reason being is that the matters of God are spiritually discerned. So what does this world teach us? First of all, it teaches us to be so short-sighted we cannot see past our own flesh. Everything becomes very inwardly focused in life, if you think about it. Our career, the school that we attend, the house that we live in, the cars that we drive. Think about marriage for a moment. Divorce is sky high. The moment that marriage does not become convenient, we bail. Think about social media. We say on the outside it's about connecting with loved ones, but in reality it becomes more of a showcasing of self, so to speak. Think about church. You know, the question becomes, in most of our minds, am I being fed? Am I being fulfilled? Selfishness essentially becomes the basis for almost every decision in life. Do you know that we as Americans spend over $60 billion a year on pet care? Meanwhile, we have over 500,000 people, men, women, and children across the United States on any given night that are homeless. We as people cannot serve two masters. We cannot serve God and the world. We must make a decision. Either we'll love one and hate the other. We'll be devoted to one, we'll despise the other. The book of James even tells us that if we are friends with the world, we are enemies with God. So what can we do? Well, I think the important thing, first of all, is to understand that we have a life-threatening situation that does require a change. You know, the book of Revelation tells us that the devil, Satan, has actually deceived the entire world. The literal verbiage there is the entire inhabited earth. We have an enemy that is absolutely committed to our destruction, just like he has been from the very beginning. Let us move on now and discuss the nature of this narrow path. How do we find it? And when we do, what can we expect? I'm going to read to you a passage from Matthew chapter 7 that discusses it. Enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter in through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard-pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. You know, the word narrow in the Greek sten, actually means to groan, which signifies that this path requires great effort. It's not going to be easy. It's not designed to be easy. But there is a purpose through that. The second thing is, if we ever find ourselves on the side of the majority, we should be concerned, because we understand that few will find this path. You know, the Father gave me an analogy of this journey that I can share with you. Picture yourself in a jungle, and you happen to find this very narrow trail where you have thorns and plants and everything pressing up against you. You can barely breathe. And you begin to walk it with all these layers of clothing on. And you find that it's very, very difficult because everything is tearing away at your clothes and it's making movement difficult, if not impossible. Then one by one you begin to shed these layers, one at a time, until finally you get down to your undergarments and you realize, wow, this is the way it was designed, to walk this path efficiently without the burden of the flesh working against us. Romans chapter 8 verse 13 says that if you live according to the flesh, you're going to die. But if through the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. So we need to understand that as we are walking this journey, we need to expect the tribulation. We need to expect that it's going to be painful because we are removing the flesh. We are putting aside its hindrances. This is part of it. But it's something that the Father, through His Spirit, works together with us. So in closing, my prayer for every one of us is that we will come to the realization, while also convincing others, that this world has absolutely nothing for us. Nothing to be desired. Nothing beneficial. We are sojourners, strangers. We don't belong here. But we are here for a season and for a purpose. Ask yourself the question, when the world observes your life, your actions, your words, what do they see? Do they see somebody who looks like they fit right in? Or do they see somebody who is a changed life, who appears to be on a different path that leads to life? You know, science itself teaches us through the laws of thermodynamics that this planet has been in a state of decline from the very beginning, from better to worse. Scriptures teach us that humanity is in a state of decline from better to worse. Hearts are growing colder on a daily basis. It doesn't take much effort to turn on the news and realize quite quickly this place as a whole is in more unrest and turmoil than what we've ever seen before. The stage is being set. The Son of God Himself, in a state of great power and authority and royalty, sitting at the right hand of the Father, in obedience set it aside to come down and rescue His people, to rescue His creation. And in like manner, He's given us an example that we also are to set aside the things of this world, the things that everyone seems to desire, to not hold tightly, and instead focus on what really matters. Until next time.